Hello everyone, welcome you to Drishti IAS and myself Akshay Gurubhaiye. And yes, I hope you guys are enjoying this, you guys are getting it well also, so that we can now continue with the course of discussion. Chalo. So first, as usual, which topics we are going to have discussion on? Like, as you must be aware about that India has updated its NDCs, National Contributions 3.0. So we shall discuss them. The net zero, and that is sector specific. If you consider, that is for shipping industry, then it is for carbon capture and utilization. What is the difference between carbon capture, utilization and storage? We will be discussing. Then it is for global methane status report. Okay, so global methane status report, what we will be discussing then. Then next to it, Nepal's Yala glacier, the first of its kind, that declaration, that dead declaration of glacier here in the South Asia. Methane 2 research station, climate tipping point, what this concept and how it really applicable here. Then Arctic amplification and India's national red list roadmap. So we are having this topic lined up. Okay, all these are important. I'm trying to cover every point here, right? So almost 100 topics will be covered for sure. Okay, so now before that, it's my duty to answer those questions we very I had given you in the last session. Okay, so consider the following statements. High seismicity applies to areas beyond national jurisdiction. Yes, BBNJ, beyond national jurisdiction, that is the name itself. It provides for a framework for creating marine protected areas, marine genetic resources, environment impact assessment and capacity building. And it mandates compulsory financial contribution from all developing countries. No, that is not the case. Answer is 1 and next. Which one of the following correctly describes the Ramsar Convention? The Ramsar Convention, when legally binding, yes, focuses exclusively on fresh water, no, fresh, brackish, salty, anything, and adapted in Iran. Answer is 1 and 3. Next, coral bleaching is mainly due to increase in sea surface temperature, ocean acidification, excess nutrients in water. So answer is all 1, 2, and 3. Next, UN conference is primarily associated with SDG 14. Yeah, SDG 14. Next, under CITES, Appendix 1 includes species threatened with extinction, allows regulated trade, and third is for species protected at least in one country. All these three are basically. Next, green status assessment, as we have already discussed, largely depicted for lion and tiger. So what it is for species recovery level and ecological functionality. Then, which of the following statement is correct about IUCN Conservation Congress held in held once in 4 years, sets conservation priorities and governments alone participate. No, government alone cannot. So answer and okay. Then now starting with the points in discussion. Now guys, NDCs, you must be aware about nationally determined contributions. They are simply under the Paris deal. So there's now 3 versions have been updated, to be frank, right? So 22nd, 22 almost, and then now in 2025, 26, as in you will find new NDCs have been updated. Now here you will find NDCs 2.0 that is given by the India. So we are focusing mainly on India because India has submitted now recently its 3rd updated NDCs. Okay, so you may find question in the examination that compare with the 3rd with the 2nd. Okay, so that you must be aware about. So here, having 50% of its capacity installed electric power from non-fossil fuel by 2030, then reducing intensity of carbon emission to 44% and carbon sink, additional carbon sink of 2.5 to 3 billion tons of carbon dioxide. Most of them are, to a large extent, we have achieved this target, and thus what now in 25 actually was a deadline, but India submitted in 2026 is NDC 3.0 updated. What reduce emission intensity of carbon, right, or of GDP 47%, right? Then achieve 60% of installed electric power from non-fossil sources. We have now 51% almost around, and then create carbon sink of 3.45 to 4 billion tons of additional afforestation. Okay, so we have already achieved 2.5 almost billion tons as in. Okay, and hopefully by the 2030 we will achieve this target. Okay, so this 3.0 target, third, revised target of NDCs must be pretty much there about, because for sure question will be asked there in the examination. Then now have a look over on this question asking, intended nationally determined contributions are seen in the context simply not by European Union plan of action outlined by the countries of the world to combat climate change. Yeah, that is clear. Otherwise you will find infrastructure investment bank, no, and it is not related with the sustainable development goal also. So answer is basically next practice question for you, and you will be answering it in the comment. Next, net zero framework. Now for shipping industry, global shipping particularly, but no, net zero, as you must be aware about. See guys, net zero is not something, you are not releasing carbon dioxide or emission from that particular region or land. No, it means whatever the amount that you have released, you should have capacity to absorb it, and if you do so, you will find you are working under the net zero commitment itself. Okay, so net zero commit or this principle simply relies on absorption should be equals to emission. So you should look for reduction in emission and increase in absorption potential itself. Now global shipping industry, particularly that is under the IMO, International Maritime Organization, has set herself a target by 2050 it would rather go net zero. Means whatever, it is one of the largest contributors of sulfur dioxide, equally carbon dioxide, and that emission. So this IMO has placed itself that it is going to be carbon neutral, it is going to be net zero by 2040. However, by 2040 needs to be 90% sub target itself, and then 50%, almost 100% as in. Now those those ships above 5,000 tonnage of carrier, right, they needs to follow these norms, and again those the substantial norms further, and if they don't do so, they have to pay the fine and penalty, which will further be used for this reduction, emission reduction target as well. Okay, there are many mechanisms for the checking, for the accreditation, and then further to maintain whether it is full or okay. So this thing you must be aware about. Now, as net zero for shipping, equally net zero target for India is equally important. Now remember, India has given herself a target of 2070 to go net zero. European Union 2050, US 2050, China 2060, Brazil 2050 itself. Okay, so we have set ourselves a target by which we need to reduce this emission intensity of the. Okay, so that is how you will find. Then now have a look over question which was asked in the European Parliament approved the Net Zero Industry Act recently. Fine, yes. Then European intends to achieve carbon neutrality by 2040. Isn't it really 2040? Is it? It is not 2040. It is 2050, and therefore aims to develop all its own clean technology by that time. It's really not possible to develop all, however, and not surely by 2040. It is 2050 target. So answer is basically statement 1 is correct, but 2 is. Next, then the practice question that is given over here. Okay, this one. Then carbon capture and utilization. Okay, carbon capture and utilization. Now guys, you must be aware about the concept of geoengineering. Are you aware about it? See, that is very much important concept that we are trying to manipulate environment, atmosphere in a way that should fit the global warming. So it is the process of manipulation of atmospheric conditions in such a way that you are, entering, or that energy that is entering into the atmosphere should get reduced, while energy that is radiated outward should be increased, so that this excessive or the global accumulation of energy balance would rather reduce, and you will have a balance of. That is simply carbon capture. Sorry, the geoengineering. Now this geoengineering works on two fronts. First, reduction of energy that is arrived, insolation energy, and increasing outgoing energy. So there are like two forms: solar geoengineering, and there is one form, carbon geoengineering. Okay, carbon geoengineering. Now for the case of management of carbon, you will find there is carbon capture and utilization method, or direct air. See, the direct air capture. So because now you will find, see, when before the start of the industrial revolution, this ppm of carbon dioxide was 190. However, now it is almost 400 or 410 by 2020 itself. So what the need is here to remove carbon from the atmosphere itself, so that the excessive retention of energy would be compensated. So this process of carbon capture is what the by means of various technologies and methods we would rather absorb carbon from the atmosphere. Yeah, you must be getting it. Okay, and then this absorbed carbon, that process is direct air capture, and then that is what used for various methods itself. Okay, so like naturally that is in the process, like carbon farming itself, naturally by plants and animals itself. Okay, but in addition, in the modern ways, you can have cement used in cement production, food processing industry, or you will find construction making industry, okay, or you will find rock and underground storage, whatever that may be a case. You will find you have captured the carbon, then utilize it, then after utilization there is again emission, and the process or cycle repeat itself. So this carbon capture and utilization process, where you are using it for some specific purpose after capturing, okay, that is carbon capture and utilization. The next is basically, again there is one concept, that is CCS, carbon capture and storage, right? Carbon capture and storage is simply a method wherein absorbed carbon is now rather allowed to store, where subterranean mine, where underground mine, where abandoned mine, or any other ways where this excessive carbon would rather allowed to store, so that it won't be obstructionist for outgoing energy. Are you getting me? Yeah. So that is what the very concept of carbon capture and utilization, where you are using it, and storage, it means you are storing it. Okay. So this two must be pretty much clear to you. Now I have a question which was asked recently. So the concept of direct air capture includes, or correct, it is a way of carbon sequestration. Fine. It can be a valuable approach for plastic production and food processing. Yes, industry and energy. And in aviation, it can be used as a source of carbon for combining with hydrogen to create synthetic low carbon fuel. See, we get to know about some other uses as well. So that is equally correct. Answer is 1, 2 and okay. Next. Consider the following activities. Now, for this kind of question, guys, always remember, where guiding statement is a longer, right, or it is actually key. You should not read it like from this top to bottom. Instead, read the guiding statement first and go through that, because you are anyway going to repeat this 1, 2, 3 and again. So that is a waste of time. When the exam is, paper is getting lengthier, don't do it. So how many of the above activities are often considered and discussed for carbon capture and sequestration? Okay, carbon capture and storage or sequestration, spreading finely ground basalt rock and farmland extensively. Okay, increasing the alkanicity of ocean by adding lime, so that carbon would rather CO2 would react it and it leads to some new formation. Capturing carbon dioxide released by various industries and pumping it into abandoned subterranean mines in the form of carbonated. Okay, so that is equally correct. You will find answer to this is all three. Next practice question for you, and you shall let me know in the comment box, guys. Don't forget to comment then. Okay. Next, global methane status report. Now, if you have noticed, guys, one thing, all are environmental or this global warming, greenhouse, and all concerns are focused mainly on carbon dioxide. Yeah. No doubt, for global warming, 60% is contributed by carbon dioxide and carbon dioxide mainly. However, there is another major culprit, that is CH4, that is almost 60% in contribution. Then there is equally NOx and others. You will find 10% almost around. So the duty is equally, we have to focus on this CH4 also, because if you are considering merely doing with the carbon dioxide, you will able to reduce the rise in temperature. That won't be happening. Okay? So you have to focus equally on methane. Now, there was a global methane pledge then, considering this fact, signed by many countries to reduce 30% of global methane production by 2030, right? However, India is not party to it. Remember this fact. Okay? India is not party to global methane pledge. Now, one of the major considering fact here is what? See, the major factor that contributes agriculture, 48%, and energy production center that could release 38% of methane. Now, both this cumulatively would rather contribute for 70 to 80% of overall methane release. And for us, agriculture is one of the very crucial activities. That is anyway getting negative growth rate or very slow stagnant growth rate. If we are going to, affect it just for the means of methane production, that it would have some adverse impact on the agriculture itself. And hence, we need to manage it well. One thing further, see about methane, that is again a carbon, that is carbon compound, hydrocarbon it is. You'll find that is having a shelf life 10 to 12 years. That is a short term, moderate term, compound there in the atmosphere. Because it then react with some other element and transform itself into. Now, this methane is basically mainly released by agriculture by two activities. The one is rice cultivation or paddy, and second is livestock rearing. So these two are the major one. Thermal power plant is equally one of the major. Then apart from this, vehicle and biomass burning equally contributes a lot. Okay? Then now I have a question which was asked in the examination. Among the following crops, which one of the following is the most important anthropogenic source of both methane and nitric acid? Look always for, in such a case, for agriculture crop, the worst thing is with the rice paddy. It is water extensive crop, water damaging, soil damaging, carbon footprint, having high carbon footprint itself, okay? And it is equally, you will find a water exporting crop equally, okay? So answer here is rice. But if there won't be a rice, then you can look for the other means like sugarcane itself, okay? So that is equally a damaging crop. However, but yes, we have to look at it. Then methane is you will be answering it in the comment box. That is a practice question. Okay? Then Nepal's Yala glacier became dead or declared dead. See, it is very much common that we have seen the alive beings, human beings are being declared dead, or even animals as well. But when it comes to glacier, that is non-living entity, can it be declared as dead? Yeah. See, there are no however defined criteria, but the first such instance of the funeral was being held was with this Iceland's the Ochkojul, okay? And then for Switzerland's, you will find the Pizol, and Mexico's Oyoloka, okay, Ayoloko. So these are the few instances where funerals of glacier were being held and it declared dead. Why? Because the majority of the glacier has already been melted, and the significant part is not able to recover again, and that's why being dead. Now for the Nepal's Yala glacier, that is lying on the northeastern part or eastern part of the Nepal itself, that is this Yala region, Yala peak itself, you will find this glacier in last year, right, or last year it was noted that has already degraded 66% and 784 meters since the 1970s itself. Okay, so that is a great degradation in the glacier life itself, and possibly it won't able to recover, and hence that has been declared dead. So that is a very severe case. Why it is happening? Though no doubt that is connected with the global warming, rise in temperature, and the anthropogenic event. So it is one of the grave danger that Earth is facing. So you must think for which are the problems. See, because next practice question is simply asking you for this case. What are the impacts or damage of this glacial ice melting? Okay, you will be letting me this in comment. Next, my 3-2. So India's soft, aspiration, global power aspirations are at rise, and that is fine fair with Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam we are looking for. So Maitri 2 is what our next research base or station there in Antarctica, East Antarctica, that is planned for. However, this pretty much journey, right? This first thing, that is a green research station of India, in Antarctica. That is equally, will hold energized by the renewable energy, generally by solar panels, whenever summer is there, and the rest for the time that is by the wind energy. Okay, so that is, even you will find the waste and degraded materials are composted there only and used for the agriculture, soil production, enrichment, production, and for various purposes. Okay, so on that scale, this Maitri 2, that is going to be one of the largest research station there of India in Antarctica. You'll find it is what being planned for few upcoming, that will be there in the upcoming year. That is very important. But now we shall look for the very history of the Antarctica research program. Dakshin Gangotri 1983 it was planned for with a life of 10 years almost. However, there was a next research station, Maitri 1989 was basically brought about there. Again focusing more on the Antarctica is very important from meteorological perspective, very important from ice and cryosphere itself, very important equally from resource and that perspective. That is a global common, and we cannot let this Antarctica in isolation itself. So that is the whole community needs to be worked there. Then Bharti 2012 itself. Okay, so Antarctica is very important, crucial part of the global climate and global ecosystem itself. Okay, guys. Next, see the term in dark sometimes in the news is what? That is India, Arctic. Okay. So this particular research laboratory is underwater research laboratory or observatory in the Arctic waters. Okay. So that is again a unique case. So that Arctic it was basically asked. Then remember, Arctic is not a global common. There are few littoral countries those are having rights over on its resources. Then it is a practice question. You shall go through and look it into. Then climate tipping point. Now what is tipping point? See, tipping point is simply, see, whenever changes occur, possibility is that that process is reversible. Like say for example, if anything, like you may consider if there is a flood, so flood will one or the other time recede and automatically you will achieve the normal conditions just like as before. But what happen, tipping point, if the process or that point or that particular change is at one particular point from where there is no returning back, that process become irreversible. That once that change carried out after the tipping point, it won't able to recover. That process is simply tipping point, or that point is tipping. Now, when it comes with respect to climate, meaning the climate change and its consequences are so in a way that it is not able to take back. Yes, that it is not able to reverse itself. It is climate tipping point, right? And that is very problematic case, because now with every successive year we are cracking every tipping point of the Earth's surface. Which are those tipping points? Have a look over here. You'll find the boreal forest, right? Then Greenland sheet in North America, Greenland ice sheet, that is equally, then Amazon rainforest, the lungs of the earth, you will find that is equally tipping point. Then the West Antarctic ice sheet that has started to melt recently, the Wilkes Basin, coral reefs, then permafrost trying in Siberia, then Atlantic oceanic, Meridional oceanic circulation collapse, and Arctic ice melting. Okay? So all this you will find are what? Simply climate tipping point, and we have to watch them so closely, because their collapse is very detrimental for the earth itself. Now a bit factual practice question for you. Tell me your answer in the comment. Then Arctic amplification. Now see, Arctic, that is anyway the region, and the amplification, it means what? Rise or increase. Now, what it has been observed that, guys, see that this is in the current affair, the reason being because Arctic amplification is with the ratio of 4.0. Now 4.0. Now what does that mean by? See, Arctic amplification, first I will be explaining. This is what the global rise in temperature, okay, in general. However, Arctic region and Arctic waters are experiencing much higher level of global warming and its impact over there, and this particular case or condition is simply to be known as Arctic amplification, that is getting much hotter, warmer than the normal equatorial or tropical region. Now Arctic amplification 4.0, it means what? See, for example, if the effect of warming or the rise in temperature in the equatorial tropical region is 1 degree, then Arctic is getting rise in temperature would be there by 4 degrees itself. Earlier it was considered it is 1.5 to 2%. Recently it was 3 times that was considered. But remember, the recent research and data suggests that it is almost 4 times, meaning that whatever impact this climate change, global warming is having on every part of the earth is very different, highly uneven in nature, and there you will find this concept of Arctic amplification lies. Now then the basic again of this concept, why this Arctic amplification is there, what are the factors leading? So the most crucial factor, that is ice albedo effect. See, because ice is having its own albedo reflection of energy, and that is ultimately it is able to reduce it. But the problem with the melting of ice is what? Now ice is losing its albedo capacity, and thus energy is retained in the Arctic region. And ultimately with time, it has multiplied, temperature has started to rise, feeling warmer. That is a major contributor for Arctic amplification. 40% is by it. Then next is lapse rate feedback. See, with a normal temperature, you will find with increase in height, temperature decreases. But with the global warming, this decrease in temperature is less. Meaning Earth's surface temperature is equally higher and surface temperature is basically less. You will find that is somehow able to converse the case, and their Arctic is losing it. Okay, 15% of amplification is basically contributed by wind. Then water vapor feedback, and there are few other factors contributing for Arctic amplification. Okay, so do remember this, guys, very, very crucial and important. Now, practice question for you. Will be letting me know your answer in the comment. Next, India's national red list. Okay. Now, red list roadmap. Now, recently, Minister of State for Environment, he unveiled, this roadmap there in the IUCN Conservation Summit. Now, again under this, as you must be aware about, IUCN is what that organization that releases red data book. Now, on the same ground, very research centric, very analytical in nature, very targeting the Indian flora and faunal species. What this strategic plan for 5 years has been launched. Under this, the very objective is what? To develop India's own national red data book. That is not international level, but we need to have our own understanding of our conservation and degradation of species there in our territory. Yeah, so that is what the very intensive, clear purpose of this. However, that is not only to have a red data book, but equally we need to develop that particular framework and structure by which we can check out our conservation efforts, their utility, their limitations, and ultimately what should be done to have better conservation efforts then. So national red list roadmap, okay? National red list roadmap is or vision that is simply dealing with this case. Okay, so you shall be aware about this red list roadmap. Very important, guys. The reason being recently unveiled, and I think question would be asked on it. So remember, it is on the Ministry of Environment, Forest and Climate Change, and will be overlooked by Biological Survey of India, Zoological Survey of India. Will be overlooking it. So I hope this concept is equally clear to you. So this is all about this particular episode, as in, okay, the next and the last episode will be further discussed. Don't fail to watch it, guys, because you will be getting for sure most important points there in the session. So watch it till then. Thank you and have a good time.
For more informative content, like, share and subscribe, and do not forget to press the bell icon to get the notifications.